I'm not drinking. I don't have any alcohol in my system. So let that be known. I am the same. I'm actually even more intense when I'm sober.
That's right! We can't have anyone freak out there, okay? We've got to keep our composure! We've come too far! There's too much to lose! We've got to just keep our composure!
If he were telling the truth, he wouldn't have told us.
Unless, of course, he knew you wouldn't believe the truth, even if he told us.
First decent conversation all day, then the live gets taken down. Such bullcrap. I don't know what was hateful about that. Hopefully the appeal gets approved and I'll be able to post that, because there was a lot of bangers in there. I'm not drinking. I don't have any alcohol in my system.
Give me that thing! I'll do one! I'll do one!
We gonna do what? Oh! That's a talented man right there. That's what I'm talking.
Do it up again!
We gonna do that.
So good! Once it hits your lips, it's so good!
So let that be known. I don't have any alcohol in my system. I am the same. I'm actually even more intense when I'm sober.
That's right! We can't have anyone freak out there, okay? We've got to keep our composure! We've come too far! There's too much to lose! We've got to just keep our composure!
It's the alcohol that actually calms me down and gives me the patience to deal with the stupidity on TikTok.
I'm going to call the police.
Don't do that.
They have their punches ahead.
But Father will kill me.
You can blame it all on me. You're going to lose if you don't, so just go ahead.
Yeah.
Here you go, another bottle. Two at once?
Evelyn, do you think that's a good idea? Don't worry, it gives him power.
Are you all right?
One more drink would be helpful.
Here is a very last bottle.
What the hell is that?
What does it mean when there's a picture of a skull?
Good stuff.
There's just so much stupidity on TikTok. And then my live gets taken down because I put them in their place? For hate speech? Come on, TikTok. Y'all can do better than that. Don't be little neurotic soccer mom Karens. Learn to distinguish between chocolate and poop, please. Matt. Let's talk with Matt. Matt, how you doing?
Hey, doing all right, buddy. How are you?
Just chilling like a villain.
Yeah, once you catch this feeling, you'll be chilling. Oh, chilling like a villain.
Awesome. So obviously I stopped up here because of your background. So what do you exactly mean when you say atheism enslaves the mind?
If I read this to you, would you be willing to discuss it and break it down?
Sure.
Okay. Atheism, if you could kindly mute. Atheism enslaves the mind because it causes its believer to limit his experience to the five senses that he possesses. In other words, his reality is limited to his own understanding. Now, the Bible says, do not be wise in your own eyes. Lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways, acknowledge him, and he will make your path straight. Atheism enslaves the mind because though all of us are slaves to our own fleshly, carnal desires and sins, you are still dead in your sins because you believe you have no sin. I am free in Jesus Christ because he has paid my debts for all my past, present, and future sins. Hence, I am free and you are not. This is why the atheist is like Cypher in the Matrix or Barbie in her own Barbie land. At the end of the day, humans are subjective and God is objective. And objectivity always transcends subjectivity. All right, I'm finished. You can respond to that now.
Yeah, sure. I would just say that would really only make sense from a Christian perspective, right? Because
I do not know if he is a sinner or not. One thing I do know. I was blind, and now I see.
What did he do to you? How did he cure you of your blindness?
I have already told you, and you would not listen. Why do you want to hear it again? Maybe you too would like to be his disciples.
You are that fellow's disciple.
But we are Moses' disciples. We know that God spoke to Moses.
As for that fellow, however, we do not even know where he comes from.
What a strange thing that is. You do not know where he comes from, but he cured me of my blindness. We know that God does not listen to sinners. He does listen to people who respect him and do what he wants them to do. Since the beginning of the world, nobody Nobody has ever heard of anyone giving sight to a person born blind. Unless this man came from God, he would not be able to do a thing.
You were born and brought up in sin. You are trying to teach us.
And they expelled him from the synagogue.
I don't believe there's a such thing as a sin, and I don't believe the things that the Bible say as far as...
I know, but I addressed that in the quote. I said, you are still dead in your sins because you believe you have no sin. In other words, you don't believe in sin. You don't believe in God.
When Jesus heard what had happened, he found the man.
Do you believe in the Son of Man?
Tell me who he is, sir, so that I can believe in him.
You have already seen him, and he is the one who is talking with you now.
I believe, Lord.
And he knelt down before Jesus.
I came to this world to judge, so that the blind should see, and those who see should become blind.
Some Pharisees who were there with him heard him say this and asked him,
Surely you don't mean that we are blind too?
If you were blind, then you would not be guilty. But since you claim that you can see, this means that you are still guilty.
Right, so then that whole thing would only make sense from a Christian perspective.
No.
Yes.
Okay, all right. I'll agree. I'll concede. It only makes sense from a Christian perspective in the sense that other people that have not been taught about this concept of sin or Jesus Christ dying on the cross, resurrecting on the third day, appearing to many, and ascending into heaven and sitting at the right hand of power, then yeah, maybe it doesn't make sense to them. But now you can no longer feign ignorance because I just told you. You've just been served, Matt.
Katie Otto, you've been served.
A cease and desist order?
Yes.
No, well, whenever I say it doesn't make sense, what I'm saying is it's not that I don't understand these concepts about Christianity. I mean, I was a Christian for the first 17 years of my life. I'm saying it only makes sense to view it that way if you believe these things are part of the actual reality. Like, I don't believe that sins are a part of my reality. So your whole argument there is just coming from a Christian perspective. Like, if I were to critique your worldview on, say, the problem of evil, I would have to do what's known as an internal critique to show you where it's illogical on certain aspects that God might choose to do and what he wouldn't choose to do. Now, if you're going to say that atheism enslaves the mind, you would have to do an internal critique on my worldview without invoking the idea of sin or Jesus, because we don't believe in those things. So you would have to show me why it enslaves my mind minus your worldview.
Let's start with Neo.
What the hell? White rabbit.
You're my savior, man. My own personal Jesus Christ.
You get caught using that.
Yeah, I know. This never happened. You don't exist.
Right.
Something wrong, man? You look a little whiter than usual.
My computer, you ever have that feeling where you're not sure if you're awake or still dreaming?
All the time. It's called mescaline. It's the only way to fly. Hey, look, it just sounds to me like, you need to unplug, man. Get some R&R? Hey, what do you think, Deshore? Should we take him with us?
Definitely.
I can't. I have work tomorrow.
Come on. It'll be fun.
Yeah, sure.
Did you perceive Neo thought that he was enslaved while he was in the Matrix?
Did I think Neo was enslaved?
Yeah.
Sure. I mean, I guess he would have been, yeah. He was locked inside the Matrix.
The other life is lived in computers. Go by the hacker alias Neo and are guilty of virtually every computer crime we have a law for. One of these lives has a future, and one of them does not.
But did he feel enslaved before he even knew about the Matrix?
He didn't, no.
We're willing to wipe the slate clean, give you a fresh start. And all that we're asking in return is your cooperation in bringing a known terrorist to justice.
Yeah. Wow, that sounds like a really good deal. But I think I got a better one. How about I give you the finger and you give me my phone call?
Oh, Mr. Anderson, you disappoint me.
You can't scare me with this Gestapo crap. I know my rights. I want my phone call.
Tell me, Mr. Anderson, what good is a phone call if you're unable to speak?
And in the same way you don't feel enslaved, and I don't dispute that.
Right, but the
I'm not
difference
saying,
here...
well, maybe this might be a matter of semantics.
Maybe, but I think the difference here is we can see that Neo is enslaved because we already know that he's trapped in the Matrix.
Yes.
So we're looking at this from the idea that the Matrix is a real concept and that Neo is trapped in it. You are bringing up your atheism enslaves the argument from the idea that Christianity is a true concept and we are enslaved by our sins.
Okay, so if
To an
you can
atheist,
understand,
that doesn't really mean anything.
Time out, Matt. If you can understand the concept of that, and we know that Neo was enslaved because there was a movie that we watched, well, hey, here's a movie right here. And it's very well understood in here if you actually watch the movie. But clearly, for 17 years of your life, while you claim to be a Christian, you don't know what's in this book. You never watched this movie. You only scratched the surface. And then you left because you were the seed planted on rocky soil.
Okay, so are you implying that I wasn't actually a Christian?
Well, I don't know. I'm not sure. But
Well,
the
you
way
made
that
air-
the way that you're talking sure sounds like it. It sure sounds like you actually never knew who Jesus was in the first place. Because once you know, you don't just walk away like that.
So are you saying every
I would
Christian
make the
that is
argument that you never knew him. You never knew him.
Yeah,
And
but
he
how,
never
how
knew
could
you.
you make that argument off of a 3-minute brief conversation? You don't know me.
Because we're all known by our fruits, Matt.
Yeah,
and
but
just
you don't
because
know
just
me.
because I don't know you doesn't mean that I haven't talked to thousands of children just like you. Y'all all say the same things. It's like I'm having the same conversation over and over again.
Well, to
Like the
be fair, I'm not a child, but
Well, I call 50-year-old children too, so don't be offended.
okay. Well, I mean, I just want to push back a little bit. I don't understand how you could, make the accusation that I wasn't a real Christian. What would be your definition of a Christian?
Okay, what is the gospel?
What is the gospel?
I actually already gave the answer in this conversation, but what is the gospel?
So when you're saying the gospel, what do you mean by that?
What is the good news?
That Jesus is supposedly returning? Okay, well, maybe you can enlighten me.
What's the whole point of spreading good news in the first place? Why would anyone spread good news?
Why would anyone spread good news?
Yeah, what's the point of spreading good news?
I mean, it could be beneficial to hear.
Could be beneficial to hear, right? It's like word of mouth marketing. The most impactful tool in marketing is word of mouth, believe it or not.
Okay.
So this good news that was commanded by Jesus to be taught is his death, his resurrection, his appearance to many, him ascending into heaven, and that he will return. So you got that last part, but there's a reason for that. Why is it such good news that Jesus lived, he died, he rose again? What's the good news about that? John 3:16, for God so loved the world. He so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son, that whosoever shall believe in him shall not perish but have everlasting life.
Sure. I mean, as a Christian, I believed all of that was true.
So why don't you believe now?
I wouldn't say there's like one particular reason. It was
Let's
a
go one at a
combination of
time.
things.
Start with the basics and then we'll get more complex.
Okay, sure. I'm not sure if you're from the U.S. or if you are, what part, but I'm from the southern part of the U.S., smack dab on the eastern side of the Bible Belt. So,
I'm from Memphis, Tennessee.
oh, okay. Well, we're both Tennesseans then. Awesome.
Oh, you're from Tennessee?
Yes, sir.
Well, you know the school in the movie Blindside?
Well, at least they look good coming off the bus. They'll be terrified till they realize he's a marshmallow. Looks like Tarzan plays like Jane.
Give me a minute, Bert.
We're in the middle of practice, Leanne.
You can thank me later. Michael, do you remember when we first met and we went to that horrible part of town to buy you those dreadful clothes? And I was a little bit scared and you told me not to worry about it because you had my back. Do you remember that?
Yes, ma'am.
And if anyone tried to get to me, you would have stopped them, right? And when you and SJ were in that car wreck, what did you do to the airbag?
Stopped it.
You stopped it. You stopped it. This team is your family, Michael. You have to protect them from those guys, okay? Listen, Tony here's your quarterback, all right? You protect his blind side. When you look at him, you think of me, how you have my back, how you have his, okay? Oompa Loompa here is your tailback. When you look at him, you think of SJ and how you've never let anyone or anything hurt him. You understand me? All right, go back.
Briarcrest Christian School. That's the school I went to.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, a few
Was
years
that the
before.
actual school they used in the movie?
No,
Okay.
no. I don't know. That could have been the new campus. I don't know. I was on the crappy old campus in like middle of Midtown Memphis.
Oh, okay. Wow. Well, awesome. It's a smaller world than I thought it was.
Well, how old are you, man?
I am 35.
35. How old do you think I am?
Maybe 30?
Maybe 30. Take that as a compliment. I'm 5 years older than you.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, you look great for your age, man. I wouldn't have guessed that.
Yeah. So now let's continue, man. Tell me from the basics, what were the first things? Because you said you left when you were 17. Clearly, you were probably sexually active.
Yeah, but it wasn't really anything to do with that. It was more of, I'm not sure if you're a young earth creationist or an old earth creation type Christian, but the church I went to was very young earth. We thought the world was preached 6,000 to 10,000 years old. Evolution wasn't a real thing. And then as I got older and I started learning more about scientific understandings about things, I started to realize this doesn't make sense given the natural world and the things that are discovered to be the case. So that kind of led me down a road of thinking, well, if this part that I'm learning about Christianity isn't true, what else isn't? And then
Hold up, that's that first part. So young earth versus old earth, and your church being super adamant like my church was that it's 10,000 years old. And when I was in high school too and college, I was thinking the same thing. No, I mean 40, 50,000, 60,000 years young earth wise, maybe, but 6,000, that's just a little too short. I was thinking along the same lines as you.
Right.
So during those years of my life, I just didn't subscribe to one or the other because for me, I knew that that had no bearing on my salvation. The difference between this earth being 6,000 years old and 4.5 billion years old is irrelevant to your salvation. So number one, the first basic reason why you started doubting that seed that was planted is irrelevant. But I'll give you something that maybe you can ponder on later today. But I'll give you the 4 postulates of creation. The 4 postulates of creation. 1.
Where there's a design, there must be a designer. We see codes in DNA. Codes are evidence of intelligence because you have to translate from one language to another. We have not a single example of that happening by accident. Number 2, that the Earth, the solar system, the universe, and the galaxy are young, measured in thousands of years, not millions or billions of years. Many times people ask me, they say, well, Major, you believe in a young Earth, a 6,000-year Earth.
So this is the part where I'll address some things that you haven't considered maybe.
Can you show me that that's true without using the Bible? And I say, absolutely. What's the oldest living thing on the planet? The oldest living thing on the planet? Trees. How old are the oldest trees? 4,500 years. That takes us back almost exactly to the year of the flood, okay, in 2,500 BC. Number 2, I'm saying, look at the sky. What we call solar nebulae. A solar nebula is what we see from a supernova when a star explodes. It leaves a gas cloud. Because of our radio telescopes that we have now today, we can look deep into space and we can actually count the number of solar nebulae that are there. And how many are there? A supernova takes place about once every 26 years. How many solar nebulae do we have? 6,000 years worth.
The James Webb Telescope has also baffled the minds of secular scientists because they hypothesize that the galaxies 10 billion light years away should have been much more indicative to the Milky Way galaxy closer to the Big Bang. However, recent discovery has shown the galaxies 10 billion light years away was very similar to the same galaxies that we can observe today in the Milky Way.
And we have other evidences such as alpha decay that we do in our program that most people don't understand that also shows that the Earth is 6,000 years old. So that's the second postulate that proves that the biblical story of creation is true.
2024 also marks the 6,000th year from Adam according to a Bible from 1806.
Whereupon we reckon that from Adam unto Christ are 3,947 years, 6 months and 10 days. And from the birth of Christ to this present year is 1814 years. Then the whole sum and number of years from the beginning of the world unto this present year is 5,788, 6 months, and the said odd 10 days. In the year 1814 the world really was 5,788 years old. This year, 2022, the Earth would be approximately 5,998 years old.
Third postulate of creation.
Life that we see today are the basic kinds of animals and plant life that were originally created. So we can test that. You can breed dogs, you can breed cats, but you can't breed cats with dogs. So there are limits to how far we can go.
So in other words, that postulate is microevolution versus macroevolution. Now 4.
And lastly, that is, Earth experienced a worldwide flood in approximately 2500 BC, 1656 years after the world was created. The world is filled with limestone. Limestone is sedimentary rock. It precipitates out of water. The entire Earth was filled with water. Every mountain chain in the world, including Everest, has sea life on top of that mountain. The mountains rose out of the water, so we know that there was a worldwide flood.
Number 2, the second postulate about the young Earth, the bristle cones, the solar nebulas, and the supernovas with 6,000 years worth of observable science, and then the James Webb Telescope. These are all things that would point to more young Earth rather than an old Earth. It's not like conclusive by any means, but again, that's why I don't die on a hill on that debate.
Yeah, I would just say when it comes to things like the James Webb Telescope, over the last couple of years, they have discovered a lot of things about galaxy formations that we didn't predict correctly using certain mathematical formulas that we use to get the age of the Earth. But that in no way indicates only a 6,000-year-old universe. If anything,
That wasn't the point of that statement. What I was saying was that the secular scientists had hypothesized that based off of their calculations, these galaxies that are 10 billion light years away should be more indicative of a less developed galaxy system. So it should be more like the Milky Way looked back closer to the Big Bang. But instead, what they found was that these galaxies look pretty much the same. These formations are similar to the same formations that you'll find here in the Milky Way galaxy.
Right. I don't know if you know who Dr. Blitz is on this app. He's a physicist. He does religious debates, but he also argues against a lot of flat earthers as far as the science behind the things we understand. And his explanation for this was more of we just needed to adjust.
You cut out.
Sorry. Yeah, so I think the things you were reading there were kind of trying to say that all of these conclusions inferred the idea of a younger Earth, but they just don't. No reputable scientist would say that the findings from James Webb indicate a 6,000-year-old universe. If anything, it's very,
That's not what I'm saying. It's only addressing y'all's end of the spectrum, not ours.
James Webb Telescope discoveries challenge evolutionary models. Basically, they discover some early universe galaxies that grew up surprisingly fast. And they say this means we have to adjust our views on early galaxy evolution. And this is something that's happening again and again with the observations coming in from the James Webb Telescope. But basically, as they look out into the galaxy, they're assuming they're looking back in time. And they assume they're looking back around 10 billion years ago, closer to the Big Bang. And so they think they should find some early galaxies that aren't very mature, not very formed, and so they're looking for that, but that's not what they're finding. It's really kind of surprising.
Yeah, there are definitely some astronomical problems with the secular model after this discovery. Okay, so James Webb Space Telescope, so if you guys have heard of it, it's the huge $10 billion observatory that was launched back in, I think it was Christmas Day of 2021. And ever since James Webb came online, it's been making these huge shockwaves of finding these huge, massively formed galaxies in the far reaches, billions of light years away. And by the way, a light year is a unit of distance, not time, and so I think that's where a lot of the confusion comes from. When we're looking at really far away things, we're not actually looking back in time, we're just looking at things that are really far away. And this is actually confirming what a lot of the biblical creationists have been predicting. For example, Dr. Jason Lisle, he's a Christian astrophysicist, the founder of Biblical Science Institute. He successfully made a few different predictions before the day that even started coming around in 2022. So number one, he predicted that they would find galaxies at these really high redshifts, these really far distances away. Then secularists were expecting, forcing them to conclude that galaxies formed earlier than their models had predicted. Number two, he predicted that they would find massive, highly structured galaxies that are fully formed, not in the process of assembly, like spiral, elliptical galaxies that are just like the ones close to us. And also, which I think is the big one, detect elements heavier than lithium, like oxygen in the most distant stars that should not be there. And that's exactly what James Webb is continuing to find. Every year we're finding more of these, and so it's fulfilling all of these predictions that creationists have been making. Simply put, the galaxies that are really far away look just like the ones that are close by. It's as if these galaxies were spoken into existence by our powerful God, as described in our word. But here's the thing, biblical creationists, we always get accused of not having models that can actually make these predictions, but now you're actually seeing the tables turn, like with this article here. These secular scientists are now being forced to revamp their galaxy formation models, now claiming that the galaxies must have formed much earlier than previously thought. And that's the exact prediction that Dr. Lisle made back in 2022. It's making a lot of stress as well for some of these secular scientists. For example, here's what one astronomer said. She said, "Right now I find myself lying awake at 3 in the morning, wondering if everything I've ever done is wrong." It's like, probably have.
That's sad, actually.
Right. So you would agree then that in no way infers a young universe.
No. That's just one of the pieces. The bristle cone and the supernovas are more so, but the James Webb is just something that was relatively new, and so I added that in.
Okay.
But that part is to address the fact that these secular scientists were dead ass wrong on the fact that these galaxies are going to be a lot less developed, and that's what led to them pushing back the universe universe being 20 billion years old now or 30 billion years old. They just moved the goalpost. That's all they did. And then everyone else just buys like, oh yeah, the universe must be 20 billion years old now.
Well, I mean, you do understand how science works, right?
I do understand how it works, but the way that these people interpret the data, it baffles my mind.
Why?
Because they have no God in their hearts, no God in their minds, and they're doing everything they can to just prove their whole theory right. That's the whole sickness of atheism.
Well, to be fair, though, I think 40% of scientists are religious, and they do have God in mind when they discover these things. Most Christians would even argue that the fact that the universe is ancient doesn't negate the idea of God.
I'm not talking about the Christian scientists. I'm talking about the legacy media and what the actual popular science that gets the focus.
Okay, but
you and I both grew up in the 90s. So what we knew then compared to what we know now is vastly different.
Right.
I mean, people were going around telling people that Genesis chapter 6, the sons of God were the sons of Cain. Like,
right.
What are y'all talking about? This is nonsense.
Right. Sure, but I thought that you were implying that the reason why they keep pushing the age back of the universe is just to kind of push God out of the picture, but I don't think that that's necessarily the case. I mean, I've talked to many Christians that accept the ancient universe model, 14 billion years old or even older, and that doesn't negate the idea of a God necessarily.
No, it doesn't.
Right. So the universe could be 1 trillion years old and it still wouldn't in no way show that God doesn't exist.
Well, yes, that's true. But the thing is we already have the information. I mean, the whole reason why science became science in the first place was because the founders of science knew that God was a rational God and that the world was a rational world and their minds were rational minds.
Famous scientists who believed in the Bible. Johannes Kepler was a German astronomer who discovered the laws of planetary motion. He believed that the universe was designed by an intelligent creator and that his scientific work was a way of honoring God. Blaise Pascal was a French mathematician, physicist, and philosopher who invented the first mechanical calculator and contributed to the theory of probability. He also wrote a famous defense of Christianity called Pensées. Robert Boyle was an Irish chemist who is considered the father of modern chemistry. He defined elements, compounds, and mixtures, and discovered Boyle's law, which relates the pressure and volume of a gas. He was also a devout Christian who wrote many books on theology and supported the translation of the Bible into various languages.
They just put 2 and 2 together. Right. Science was given by God.
Okay. Well, like I said, that was just kind of the start of me wandering away from Christianity. I would say the next part would be, I just don't find the story of Christianity to make much sense. I don't think that it's necessary in day-to-day life.
All right, what part doesn't make sense and what part is not necessary?
If he were telling the truth, he wouldn't have told us.
Unless, of course, he knew you wouldn't believe the truth, even if he told us.